Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City of West Bend Licensing Board for June 20th. Note that we do have a quorum. We have 10 items on our agenda, the first being approval of the Licensing Board regular meeting minutes for June 6th.
Motion to approve.
That would be you. Elizabeth.
What did I say?
Second.
A second.
Thank you.
Sorry, I apologize.
Those minutes have been motioned and seconded. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Next up is Class B beer license renewals.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motion second. Any comments or corrections or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Number 3, reserve Class B combination license renewals.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motion second. Any questions on this? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Number 4, amusement arcade renewals.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motion second. Any questions on this one? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. That passes. Number 5, extension of premise for Kate's Place at 277 South Main Street in West Bend for the sale and consumption of alcohol in the commercial lower level outdoor bar area and seating.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motion second. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Number 6, extension of premise, one-day amendment Kingpin Bowl and Ale House.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motion second. Any comments or corrections? Questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Number 7, original Class A combination license for Barton Mart Inc. at 1516 North Main Street.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motion second. Any questions on this one? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Number 8, applications for and recommendation to council of an available non-reserve original Class B combination liquor license.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Yep. So I think this is the one
Sorry.
with just a little bit more
Yes.
discussion.
Sorry.
Yep. I'll recommend that Copper River Bar and Grill.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And motion seconded to grant the Class B combination liquor license to Copper River Bar and Grill. Any questions on that? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So we've already taken care of 10 now, so we'll go to number 9, which is original reserve Class B combination license for the Barton House LLC, the Barton House of 1800 Barton Avenue. This would be a recommendation to deny because we only had one to give away, correct? Oh, I'm sorry, reserve. You're right. So, a reserve Class B combination license.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Been motion second. Any question on this one? Hearing none. All those in favor, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So should we still do number 10 if we've granted? No?
No need.
Great. Thank you. Then, having no further business for the licensing board, I'll adjourn by call of chair. And then I will call to order the City of West Bend Common Council meeting for June 20th. Note that we do have a quorum with Alderman Kaler absent but excused, so please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. First up, we have approval of the minutes. We have first up the Common Council special meeting minutes for June 6th.
Motion to approve. Second.
I'll give it to Alan and Model. Any corrections? And all those in favor, so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And the Common Council regular meeting minutes from June 6th as well.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Alan and Model again. Any corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor, so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to presentations, we have the July 2022 is Parks and Recreation Month proclamation. If I could have a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Alan and Berquist. All those in favor, so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And this proclamation so reads, Whereas Parks and Recreation activities enhance the physical and mental health of individuals, workforces, and communities. And whereas Parks and Recreation opportunities and open space enhance the desirability of communities as locations for business, industry, and residential housing. And whereas parks and open space are vital to the appearance and livability of communities, protect our air and water, and balance our ecosystem. And whereas it is the right of everyone, regardless of age, race, color, religion, gender, national origin, or ability, to participate in parks and recreation programs and activities and enjoy parks and open space. And whereas Parks and Recreation stimulates tourism, revenues, and the economic development of communities. Now therefore I, Christoph E. Jenkins, Mayor of the great city of West Bend, do hereby proclaim July 2022 as Parks and Recreation Month in the city of West Bend. And I encourage all citizens of West Bend to participate in the many great special events and programs in our parks in the month of July and throughout the entire year. Thank you, guys. And with that, we'll go to number 2, which is our closed session item. Entertain a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to state statute section 19.85, para 1G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. And this is for an update on property tax litigation with various properties.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I'll give it to Dolnick. You don't get too many here. Dolnick and Allen. And then if I could please have a roll call vote.
Alderman, sorry if I mispronounced your name, Butchlick, is that correct?
Aye.
Alderman Adlin,
Aye.
Alderman Berquist,
Aye.
Alderman Dolnick, Alderman Aaron,
Aye.
Alderman Model,
Aye. Perfect.
and Alderman Zingzine.
Aye.
Thank you. We are now in closed session and we'll be right back. And we are back in open session in Common Council. I'm going to recess to Public Works.
Good evening. I would like to call the Board of Public Works for approval of the minutes of June 6,
Motion to approve.
2022.
Second.
Any questions or comments? There are none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 2, resolution approving the 2021 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report of the City of West Bend Sewer Utility. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening. Tonight I have the 2021 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report. It consisted of 10 sections. We received A's in all sections, giving us 4.0. Because of that, DNR does not require any further action besides the resolution.
Motion to approve.
Are there any questions for Steve? There are none. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Being no further business before Board of Public Works, I adjourn. Thank you, Steve.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee. We've got a couple of items on the agenda. First being the approval of the minutes for the Finance Committee regular meeting, June 6, 2022, 6:25 p.m.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Presentations. Audit presentation by Baker Tilly. Do we have somebody on the phone? Or? Oh, what's that? Okay.
Michael will be joining us later.
Gotcha. Good
Hey, Andrea.
evening, Andrea. Are we
Hi, are you ready for me? Sorry, the sound is cutting in and out. Yes, we are.
we need to turn that up. I can't hear.
All right, I will get started. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can now, yeah.
Perfect. So thanks for your time this evening and for allowing me to join you virtually. My name is Andrea Jansen, and I'm a partner with Baker Tilly's Public Sector Practice and one of the members of our city audit team. For our time together, I wanted to share a few high-level comments about the audit, the formal financial statement document, and the reporting and insights communication.
That sounds okay, Andrea. If you can just keep to the highlights, that'd be great.
Sure, I can do that. So I can share my screen if that is helpful.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead and share it.
What? I can't really hear what she's saying. Sorry.
She's going to share her screen with us.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time hearing you. You're good. You're great. Thank you.
Can you see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so financial highlights from the year. We've got our client service team there, but I will move into the general fund results. As a reminder, the general fund is your primary operating fund of the city. And this first chart is showing here the fund balance by category. So you can see this compared to 2021 compared to 2020. Your total fund balance is about 10.5 million at the end of the year. This is up just over $500,000 from the previous year. And then we've got the different categories of fund balance laid out here for you. They are non-spendable is really the most restrictive, or assets that aren't in spendable form. Things like prepaid items, inventories, things like that. And then unassigned fund balance here up at the top increased to $8.1 million at the end of the year. And that is fund balance that is really not earmarked for any specific purpose. So the increase here is a result of net income for the year, as well as the decrease in non-spendable fund balance because the prepaid items went down quite significantly in 2021. So summarized income statement here, you can see your actual results for the year. As I mentioned, a net income of just over $500,000. And this is compared to your final budget. You had planned for a net loss of about $725,000 for the year. So actual results much better than planned.
Awesome.
Moving into page 2 of the highlight, still talking about the general fund here, talking about your unassigned fund balance, that fund balance that is not earmarked for any specific purpose. And comparing this over time over the last 5 years and comparing it to your policy as well. And we've also got some comparative metrics on the blue dots. So you can see at the end of the year, you're at 31.4% of your subsequent year budgeted expenditures for the general fund. This is a really healthy balance here and certainly well within your policy range. And in line with or slightly above some of the similar municipalities of similar size populations. Then switching gears, we are going to look at the debt, the general obligation debt for the city. This is again compared to both your policy, which is the orange line, and the state statutory limit, which is the black line. So you can see that the state statutory limit is trending upward. That calculation is 5% of your equalized value. And then the green line is your actual general obligation debt outstanding at the end of the year. You're just around $52.7 million. And you can see that the difference between your policy and your actual, that margin is growing. So you can, these are strong metrics and trending in the right direction here, building a little bit of cushion between your actual debt and your policy. And you can see you've got two different types of general obligation debt, or should I say it's split between city and utility. No revenue debt outstanding at the end of the year, and $1.3 million in capital leases. Those capital leases do not factor into the general obligation debt in the chart. If you want to see more comparative metrics, this link at the bottom of the page will take you out to the Wisconsin Policy Forum. Lots of good data and information out there. And still talking about debt here, but we're talking about now what the governmental funds pay in debt, so your principal and interest. The green line here is comparing your debt service to non-capital expenditures, and you can see the last 3 years you've really been trending downwards towards your policy maximum, which is 20%. At the end of the year, you're at 20.7%, and really in line with comparative metrics for similar sized population cities. And then next two charts here that we have are looking at the utility results. So first is water utility. You can see your actual rate of return and your authorized rate of return at the top of the page here. As a reminder, the authorized rate of return is set by the PSC of Wisconsin. And there was a rate increase during 2021. So you can see that that has positively impacted your operating revenues of about 5.3 million in the current year. And your operating expenses are down to about $3.7 million, closer in line with 2019 results. Your unrestricted cash reserves are about 6.6 million at the end of the year, which is over 14 months of cash reserves on hand. This is a really, really healthy balance. And then lastly, on this page, we've got your investment in capital, which takes a look at the utility plant and how much of that is funded by equity and how much of that is funded by debt. Only 11% funded by debt, which is, again, really, really healthy. And lastly, here we've got your sewer utility results, the operating results. Here your operating revenues are in green, about 4.4 million, which you're very close to breaking even in the current year. New rates were approved in 2020, so you can see you've had a steady increase in operating revenues trending in the right direction over the last 3 years. I would take this in consideration along with the unrestricted cash reserves that you have in the fund of about 6.6 million or 18 months on hand, and your investment in capital primarily funded by equity. Your sewer utility plant is, though this bar graph isn't quite proportional. So yeah, I would say overall, the sewer utility did have an increase in net position after you add the contributions and transfers, and they do have some really healthy reserve balances. So I would just say continue monitoring the operating results of this fund and continue to review rates and determine if any additional increases are needed. And maybe the other comment to make is just on the financial statements. We did issue an unmodified opinion again this year. There were no new accounting standards that were implemented, but there were some changes in auditing standards. So if you're looking at the opinion, comparing this year to last year, you will see some reordering of the information and some additional information on the responsibilities related to the audit. But overall, a clean audit opinion, and just really wanted to say we appreciate the work of the city's finance department and others that we work with. They always do a really nice job preparing for us and answering all of our questions. If there are questions from the group, or if there are certain things that you would like me to cover in more detail, I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, anybody got any additional questions? Go ahead, Jed. Yeah. Alderman Dolnick.
Excuse me, just a quick question. Debt service to non-capital expenditures, what would examples of that be? Because I was trying to think of what a non-capital expenditure would be that would be borrowing, and
So I only can hear part of that question. I know we're talking about debt service to non-capital expenditures, but I couldn't hear the rest of it.
Do you have an example of that?
I think you might both just relay the question because that might work better.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Can you say your question again, just so for sure I'm getting it correctly?
regarding debt service to non-capital expenditures, I was trying to think of what we would be incurring debt for something that wasn't capital. So what would an example of that be?
So the ratio is comparing debt service to non-capital expenditures, just because your non-capital expenditures tend to be more stable. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your debt is for your operating expenditures or for those non-capital expenditures. It's just the common ratio that's used.
Oh, it's just a ratio. I understand now. Okay.
Just establishing a point of reference, I guess.
Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Jenkins, did you have a question about the debt management part that we were talking about earlier?
Sure. Well, first off, I just want the council and I guess the city just to pay attention to our fund balance. I mean, that's our savings account, so to speak, and to see how healthy that is. I mean, that's something that we should be really proud of as a city. It puts us in a great fiscal position. Yeah, so the question that Alderman Model was talking about, let me look at my notes here. So it's about the debt management policy. So the policy's been that, or the maximum policy has been that we're at 20%. We clearly, I mean, while we're trending down or we're getting there, that doesn't seem like a realistic goal. So I guess my question for you, Andrea, is do you or can you give us a recommendation of what maybe is a more realistic goal for us to have as far as a policy maximum?
To be honest, we don't have a whole lot of municipalities of your size that have a policy necessarily on how much that they should spend. Most of the policies are more geared toward your debt capacity. That might be a good question for your financial advisor if there are any certain debt, certain ratios or things that they're looking at when they are rating the city as far as how much you're spending on debt.
Okay.
Cool. Any other questions for Andrea? No, we're good. This is just a presentation, so we don't need no action, right? Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. I appreciate it. You have a wonderful evening.
Thanks so much. You as well.
Okay, where are we at here? All right, agenda item for consideration. This is agenda item number 2, resolution transferring library sprinkler project funds from the capital project fund to the general library fund.
Carrie's not here today, but Ian, were you going to start? Or otherwise I can start, and Steve's here if there are specific questions. This, I think maybe explaining it in plain language might be the easiest way. At least it's an easier way for me to understand it. We had a capital project to construct or reconstruct the library, fix the library sprinkler system, and $75,000 total was the project costs, and $37,500 was to come from library funds, and $37,500 was to come from city funds for a total of $75,000. And as the project got completed and the funds were expended, they were coded in a way where they both came out of the library funds in 2 different accounts. The library had and is getting less complicated of a fund structure. And thanks to Steve for helping work through that. We're excited about getting a more streamlined and understandable accounting structure and a more simple way of viewing the dollars. It's really not that complicated of a budget, but we've made it that way over the years. And so I'm looking forward to it becoming even more streamlined. So as those, it's not a shock to me to hear that the coding got messed up and that we took both 37.5s out of the library fund. So this puts one of the 37.5 back. So we borrowed 37.5 from our capital, and this puts it back into the library fund.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it does it with a lot of legalese and language, and
That has been kind of complicated to understand over the last
and
few
increasing
years.
and decreasing and decreasing and increasing. And if Carrie were here, she would give you a 15-minute description on why that has to be from an accounting standard. So Andrea is happy next year when we come back, and
Gotcha.
fully appreciate that and respect that. And the library board wants this to happen, and I know Steve wants it to happen. So
Okay. So looking for a motion on the resolution.
thanks.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That should do it. And I will adjourn the finance committee by the call of the chair.
Thank you, Alderman Model. We'll reconvene into open session for our common council. We're on the consent agenda consisting of items 3 through 12.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Alan and Model. Any questions on any of those items? Yes, sir.
Yeah, should we take the awarding of the Class B non-reserve license out? Because that's like asking for a choice by the council. And we haven't had any discussion on that yet. I think we need to take and handle that separately.
So I think it
That'll
is,
affect that, and I believe the item for the non-reserve.
so I'm being told that it is already out.
Thank you, Alderman Allen. Yeah.
Which one? Item 15?
Yeah, item 15 is the non-reserve.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's- So it's not,
But you do have the reserve ones still in there, though. So you need to pull 9 and 10 as well.
Actually, just
well, just one of them, right?
Yeah, well, but you need to pull 9 and 10 out for now, because you'll make the decision on the non-reserve once you decide, or the
Sure.
reserve once you decide the non-reserve.
Yeah, that would be acceptable.
Does that make sense?
Voting on it is premature now, yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, because we haven't decided yet. You would.
Okay. Well, I'll defer to our legal counsel, so we can take 9 and 10 out, and then we do have a motion by Allen and Model with that, to that effect. Anything else? And all those in favor, it'll be saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that passes. And on to agenda items for consideration. Number 13, resolution for Wisconsin Department of Transportation, WISTAT, FFY 2022-2023 bipartisan infrastructure law supplemental transportation alternatives program grant application. Who's going to start this off?
I can start, introduce it. Jess Wilds is here and is the main author of the grant, so we have an opportunity, and Chief is here as well. Chief Daring has worked on the grant application and been a part of the staff team to discuss whether or not to promote and put forward this grant. One of the requirements of the grant is to ask for this resolution tonight. So that's what this is about. It was a very tight timeline when we became aware of the grant and when the grant was due. So we moved forward with the grant knowing that A, you could kill it by not passing this resolution if you didn't want it to, or B, if you pass the resolution and we're fortunate enough to receive the grant, you could still not accept the grant award at that time. So you do have some more checks and balances regarding this grant. We've had conversations regarding pedestrian safety over the 6 years that I've been here, and I'm guessing many years before that, regarding mid-block crossings, some really highlight crossing walks in some areas, whether to put painted crosswalks on roads, which ones get them, which ones don't. Crossing guards has been discussed. Bike Friendly has come forward with bike routes, and that has been discussed over the years and the value of them. And then recently, an approach was made from a scooter company, which is also a pedestrian form of pedestrian travel. And so we thought pedestrian safety was a big enough topic that it would be worthy pursuing this grant application. The grant, if you authorize the resolution today, would allow the request to continue to go forward and make us qualified for it. We have no idea whether we're going to score it or not. If we do have that fortunate opportunity to get the grant awarded to us, we'll be back before you and be able to discuss again the acceptance of it or not. But we do anticipate contracting with a consultant to do this work. There are engineering firms in this space that do this professionally. If there are more specifics about the details, I'll defer to Chief on the safety part of it. But that's what's before you tonight, is to authorize this grant to continue to move forward.
I think this study makes a lot of sense, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Model and Allen. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So this is taking a holistic approach to the whole issue of traffic safety and pedestrian safety and bike safety and scooter safety and whatever. Is that the approach? I get a thumbs up, so I'll say
Yes.
yes.
Yep.
And then we'll come back with recommendations. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yep.
Is that what the, yeah, okay.
It would highlight spots that are potentially problematic and
Okay, right, that's what I thought, I just making sure.
position us well for potential grants in the future to help fix those if we should choose to pursue
Gotcha,
them.
gotcha.
And
Sorry, Mark.
And then this would go to, like, the Traffic Safety Commission to decide if there were changes in our speed limits or crossings or any of that. I'm getting a nod out of the chief, so that's fine.
Well, we'll welcome him up anyway.
Sure.
Come on
I
up.
can certainly speak to it.
Yeah.
I think it hits all the things that you mentioned, right, as Mr. Shambo pointed out. Certainly, it's an ongoing topic, mid-block crosswalks. In our listening session in early May, one of the most passionate responses we got was from a very well-known citizen who has a tremendous desire to see West Bend promoted as a pedestrian-friendly community, and crosswalks painted and those things. So when admin brought this to our attention, it seemed like a perfect fit, coupled with our recent talks about the scooters as well. It just seems like a no-brainer to study where we can improve safety, and not just have it be our historical and maybe anecdotal beliefs, but actually have some science and data behind it.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Anything else? Then all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes. And on to number 14, in a related topic, ordinance repealing and recreating section 7.16 and 7.171 and creating 7.161 for the operation of bicycles, electric scooters, play vehicles, and inline skates. I think the easiest way maybe to tackle this, and I know we have a gentleman from Bird here, but if it's the council's desire to wait to see the results of this study that we're hopefully going to do, I think that might determine our path forward with the ordinance change. So we could table it if we wanted to, or otherwise we could talk about it. It's just up to you guys, since you just approved going forward with the study.
Right. How long is this study gonna take? I mean, that sounds like we're pushing that out for quite a ways for the company that's considering.
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance change. That way we can get in, if somebody will second it, we can discuss it. Otherwise, it's out of order to discuss it.
Okay, I'll make a second then, because I do want to discuss it, yeah.
Sounds good. Been motion second. Would you like to discuss further?
Oh, right. I have concerns about the operation of the electric scooters. I know this is something that's going to be new to West Bend, and I have some understanding about how the proposed company is going to operate, and I have concerns about that. So I don't know if that's something that would need to be included in an ordinance, and maybe that's something that might be determined in that study. I don't know, but I have concerns about the scooters being just scattered all over the city with no sense of organization. I know that there are companies out there that have zones that you drop the scooter off in or pick the scooter up in, and they're everywhere. The zones are all over the place. They're conveniently located for most situations, but they focus the scooters all in one area that's out of the way and maybe a little more attractive than just kind of left leaning on a curb. So I don't know where that conversation is appropriate, but it seems like this is one time where it's coming up. So.
Oh, yep, go ahead.
Ian can talk through the specifics of the ordinance that's drafted. He did draft it, but I'll start with maybe the process on how we got here to date. When the state law changed 3 years ago, police chief at the time and myself and Ian and Max all had a conversation about, do we draft an ordinance to address this, or do we leave it be for the time being? We talked through the pros and cons, some of which Alderman Model just referenced, and I think if it's the council's wishes, Michael Cavato, who is on the call with us tonight, can help to address specifics of that, because it's his business and I don't want to get into that. But we did determine at that time that we were not likely to be a candidate for a scooter town, and I think we were accurate. We did not have any proposals from any scooter companies, electric scooter companies, until now, 2022. Fast forward 3 years, and more municipalities, I listed some in the memo for you, that have scooters and scooter ordinances within their programs, within their cities. They now have approached the city of West Bend and really want to have a scooter program here. So again, we reconvened the group of individuals, of staff, and asked Ian to draft this ordinance that you have before you. We attempted to address some of those questions regarding corrals and where things go through the ordinance, but I do think versus maybe diving into the specifics or one-off questions on what's in the ordinance or what's not, it's up to the council, but if you'd allow Michael to speak to it, I think he might be able to alleviate or answer some of those questions that you have.
Sure, and I do just want to say, I'm sorry, Jed, just real quick. I love the idea of us becoming an electric scooter town. I think that's great. I just like to see a little organization to it. So.
Alderman Dolick had a question. Yep.
Well, I'm uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable originally because this ordinance appears to have been written for Bird, because there's a section in here that refers not to a vendor, but Bird. Bird shall do this, Bird shall do that, 3 separate times. So I don't know if this ordinance was written by Bird or we just wrote it in anticipation of Bird. And now we have a representative from Bird. I don't understand why we're getting, if we're going to do an ordinance, it should be independent of whatever the vendor is. We need to only look out for the interest of the city, no matter what the vendor is. I also notice in the ordinance, there's really nothing in here requiring that any vendor be a corral. So we're leaving the door open for this particular vendor, which is dockless, no corrals, which is an interesting point of view. So, no, speaking for myself, I'm not comfortable. No offense, Michael, if you hear my voice, I'm not comfortable with having the company representative talking to us.
Can you speak to the ordinance, please?
So the specific one you're referring to, that this was not written with Bird in any way, shape, or form. We discussed the ordinance once it was prepared, and there was some discussion about the insurance provisions. The tweak there, I don't know how that changed to Bird. It should have been the contractor. I'm not sure how specifically that ended up in there, but we did discuss kind of how the mechanism of that insurance works. The language in the rest of the ordinance was drafted by the city specifically. I will also note that this doesn't address just commercial rentals. And in fact, I was at the city attorney's conference, or the municipal attorney conference last week, and asked Sheboygan, who we took referenced a lot of language from and influenced kind of how we drafted this. I asked the Sheboygan city attorney about that, and he said one of their bigger concerns lately hasn't even been the rentals, it's been private ownership, which we are completely silent on as well. And it hasn't been a huge issue yet, but they're becoming more and more and more prominent, seeing people riding e-scooters around that they bought for their kids or whatever. So I regardless of the impressions over the short-term rentals, and I think that's something we need to address one way or the other as well, we certainly need rules for operation, rules for parking of scooters, etc. So we need that paren 2 and paren 3. We need to address paren 4 one way or the other, because in the absence of anything, so we are allowed to prohibit or regulate short-term rental of scooters. So we need to address it one way or the other, whether it's to provide a framework where they have to come through us to contract, or whether we say no. We need to address it one way or the other. And I think we very thoroughly address as much as possible how what happens with the scooter rentals. I mean, we can certainly get into some of the specifics and go through those, but we have tried as best we can to look into the crystal ball to figure out what issues can arise based on what other municipalities have had. I acknowledge I've seen these. I was in San Diego when they first started coming out, and they were everywhere. I was in San Diego this spring, and they weren't. They were much more under control. So this has definitely been an evolutionary process for the regulation of these over the last 5 to 10 years since they became more prominent. So I think there's kind of two pieces, and then, because I know some questions came up, the changes to the bicycle and the play vehicle language, the other two sections that are being addressed, are primarily bringing those codes in line with the maps that are part of the scooter code, so that we consistently reference those maps instead of zoning districts, because the zoning district designation isn't necessarily accurate. And also, the other changes to the bicycle ordinance is essentially removing those 8, 9, the provisions in 8 and 9 that we don't, that's not how we operate with regards to the bicycle enforcement at this stage. And the penalties are part of our standard penalty provisions, so we don't need specific penalties within the bicycle ordinance. So that's just bringing everything more in line with how we operate today. So I guess if you have specific questions with regards to the operation, I apologize, I don't know how that oversight, those were discussions with Byrd over how that liability language was worded with regards to corporate operations, and it was just an oversight when we made the changes.
That answer your questions?
Yeah, if I could just do one other thing, and that's fine. And you have said before that we need to get something in the city code in order to get jurisdiction over the rentals, and that fills that need. The only other concern I had, and maybe some other people share that, is allowing electric scooters. This would allow electric scooters in the 2 business districts, but we don't allow bicycles that on the sidewalks in the business districts, where we do not allow bicycles, and that seemed to be a contradiction.
So there's kind of 2 things there with regards to, and we definitely anticipate if there are scooter rentals that the bulk of the scooter traffic is going to be the rental scooters. The companies that operate them have the ability to geofence areas. So Sheboygan addressed the same thing. Their compromise on the issue was to geofence the areas, restrict the speed to 10 miles per hour. We can't geofence, obviously, somebody's kid who has their own electric scooter. That's a concern, but I think the bigger concern is making sure that the scooters are, rental scooters would be appropriately operated. The other big thing there is with bicycles, we can't restrict how they're used on the sidewalks speed-wide, other than to say at a reasonable rate. And so the concern there is we can geofence Byrd scooters and say you can't go more than 10 miles per hour on the business district streets. But we can't stop some kid from riding 20 miles per hour on the sidewalk and running people over with a bike, and those are probably going to be more common than the Byrd scooter issue.
I don't think you answered his question.
Scooters are going to be on the side, allowed.
Yes,
on the
so that's the reasoning behind preventing bicycles from being on the sidewalk is because we don't want some kid riding 15, 20 miles an hour on the sidewalks. We can control the speed at which the scooters are operated on the sidewalk.
Geofencing is
with the
difference.
geofencing.
Except for privately owned scooters.
Correct. I acknowledge that.
I think Alderman Dolnick asked about scooters specifically on sidewalks in the historic Barton area and downtown. So,
and that we ban the bicycles.
So right. So when the ordinance came out the first time, it did not have that differentiation. Chief Daring and the staff team that was meeting was discussing the pros and cons of that, and it came out with scooters allowed on sidewalk. The one you have in your packet now, 2E, under rules of operation of electric scooters, specifically states, it's 2D, not E. Electric scooters shall not be operated on any portion of sidewalk in the downtown West Bend Business Improvement District, and that's the map that's included, or the historic Barton Business District. So that correction has been heard and made.
Okay, excellent.
So it is the same as bikes now.
I'm sorry, this is going to sound stupid, but so the bike's not being operated on the sidewalks in the historic Barton Business District is a new thing? Yeah. It sounds like it, because I have.
Yes and no. It's not a new thing. It's a new thing from a map standpoint. It's not a new thing because we had it outlined by way of zoning in the past, which included that area anyhow.
Okay. I had a couple of constituents that had real concerns about that, because in the Barton area on Barton Avenue, I do have a lot of residential, maybe a little bit different than downtown. And so I've got, people with kids that ride, they're gonna ride their bikes on the sidewalk on Barton Avenue. They just are, but I just wonder if they're gonna be, put in handcuffs and taken off to jail, or how's that gonna work?
7-year-olds.
No, we don't handcuff and take anyone to jail for
Okay.
riding bikes on the
Thank
side.
you.
But I can tell you, as a young bike officer in the mid to late 90s, I spent the majority of my summer nights yelling at kids in the downtown area to get off their bikes on the sidewalks in the downtown. That's been in place
Okay.
for years.
Okay.
One of the, and I apologize, I believe some of the confusion for the no scooters on the sidewalks was my inability to communicate clearly on that issue. So I apologize. That's on me, not on the staff. One of the main concerns I have is that we have consistent enforcement amongst all of those play type vehicles, and that in this current ordinance that you see is now the case, right? I wanted to make sure that we weren't extending any privilege to rental scooters, and that in this ordinance is now the case. It gives us the ability to enforce, and we're very good at enforcing bike laws, skateboard, rollerblades, scooters. Alderman Berquist can attest. I know he spent a vast portion of his career on day shift making sure those were abided by, and I did the same, and we will continue to do the same. So that concern is taken care of, I believe, with this version of the.
Okay. It's just the language is out
And
there.
if you
so-
note the map for the downtown West Bend district, we did move the line for that because it originally went right down the middle of the Eisenbahn Trail. So we moved that to the edge of the Eisenbahn as those changes were being made to make sure that there wasn't some restriction on the Eisenbahn.
Yeah, it's not a great situation having even kids riding their bikes in the street downtown. We understand that, but if you can just visualize, put yourself in front of the theater, or Candyman is a great example because the way pedestrians exit those stores, having a bike, having a skateboard, having a scooter, no matter the origin of it, because there are a fair amount of the electric scooters being utilized within the city now, non-rental. You can imagine the problems that it causes riding on the sidewalk with just no warning. So I'm glad that was addressed. And I think the geofencing that Ian's referencing will keep the scooters to be, I get your point, right? They might actually be safer on the streets than the bikes that are doing the 20 miles an hour. But I do appreciate Alderman Dolnick's wisdom and experience to point out that language that got past me as well. And you're correct. It shouldn't reference a specific company. It should reference the vendor itself. So thank you for pointing that out.
I think I saw Alderman Singsheim. Did you have a question?
So in the downtown business district,
Aaron, do you mind turn on your mic?
Sorry. In the downtown business district, are the scooters going to be limited inside of that red area? Or is that the area they're not going to be allowed in at all?
So that would be, the intent would be to geofence them within that area. So
In the
that
area.
There's essentially a
Okay.
speed limiter on them in that area.
Okay, so they're within that area, but they're limited to 10 miles an hour.
And not on the sidewalk.
And not on the sidewalks. Okay.
Any questions on my right? Yep.
I noticed in the ordinance, in the section for rules of operation of electric scooters, it says that you can't operate a scooter on a roadway with a speed limit of more than 25 miles per hour. So, Main Street from Decorah to Paradise, you couldn't operate a scooter on. Could you ride it on the sidewalks in those business district?
Yes.
Okay.
You can't ride it on the street.
Right, but
Yes.
you can ride a bicycle on the street.
Correct. But I would say the difference there is the wheel size. The scooters have those little tiny wheels, and if you hit a rock, it's very different than hitting a rock on your big bicycle wheel.
Okay.
So, and by statute, you can regulate, above 25 miles per hour, you can regulate the operation of scooters. You can't prohibit them on streets under 25 miles per hour, but you can regulate their operation if the speed limit is over 25 miles per hour.
Would it be appropriate to have Ian make the necessary changes to make this non-vendor specific?
I think you can just incorporate that reference. That's a typo that's easily fixed.
Okay.
It's not changing the substance of it at all. It's just changing that to say the licensee shall ensure its contractors.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate being called, or being, that I have wisdom, but actually I missed it too. It was brought to my attention by a local journalist.
Oh, no.
Any other comments, questions? Oh, just a second.
Are we?
Yep.
So is this the last opportunity we're gonna have? Are we gonna squash this now, or this is the last opportunity we're gonna have to identify where the scooters can be dropped off and not dropped off? Is that something we can address later?
I think that's a business operation question that probably would be, our gentleman here from Bird could answer about his specific business on, if we would like him to do that. But there's nothing in the ordinance that says they have to do that right now. And I think that's Alderman Dolnick's point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of disagree with you, Alderman Dolnick, about hearing from Mr. Bird.
That's fine.
But I kind of would like to hear from him.
Question. Are we in receipt of a formal proposal to bring in scooters? I mean, and if so, what action is required by the council?
So prior to,
Ian, before you start, I can say yes, we've been engaged by Bird through Michael Cavato as far as wanting to bring them here, and that's what prompted this new staff conversation. And then legally, thanks, Ian, as far as describing what, because they could come without. I think that's important for the council to know that.
Yeah. So the next step would be after we have the framework in place, because we need an ordinance one way or the other. So if it's unanimous and adopted tonight, it would be to start the contract discussions to enter into the contract with them so they can obtain a license. So there will be a more formal document outlining some of these procedural things like the geofencing and such. That will be the number of scooters, that type of thing, that will be company specific, whether it's Bird or any other company. So it will address all of those specifics within there. I would say in general, and there will be some ability to tweak some of the requirements for parking and rebalancing and stuff like that, but we tried to set reasonable minimum standards so that we at least have something in there. And we discussed a lot as far as where can they be parked within the right-of-way, because, keep in mind, for the most part, the city owns the terrace between the sidewalk and the road. So we discussed a lot, should they be allowed to be parked in the terrace in front of my house? Is that reasonable?
Just in front of your house?
Yeah, just in front of mine. But, what if they park them in front of businesses on Main Street? How does that work? And I think some of that is a discussion that evolves over time with the contract, because clearly those are like year-to-year discussions, at least at this stage, as we figure out how this works in the city. But we at least have minimum requirements that applies not just to Bird and short-term rental companies, but also to some kid dumping their, privately owned one right in front of the door of Candyman when they go in to get candy.
Would there be any exclusivity for a short-term rental company? In other words, can 12 companies just come in and start operating on the same rules?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they all have to get licenses.
Right.
you know, we may draw the line at a certain point to be like, oh, we already got 4 contracts this year, let's have a discussion next year when we do the renewals. But you know, that it's not exclusive, it's just Bird is first to the table, and if somebody else came right away, yeah, we could be bringing 2 of them to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
But
Alderman
yet,
Butchlick?
Ian, we would still have control of the number that can come in here.
That would be part of the contract.
Okay, thank you.
And there's another
Yes.
opportunity to talk about parking of the scooters. Is that right? Is this, voting for this tonight is not going to be the the end of that discussion? Jay, go ahead. What?
Yeah, we talked about having corrals specifically in the downtown area where they're required to be parked, like they won't allow you to put them. I think if you heard from the individual that does this, you might hear more of that, but that's up to you.
Please.
You can also have like a $1 rebate if you park it in a predefined spot, and if you park it in front of Ian's house, then you don't get that buck back. There are lots of different kind of programs like that they might know about that we just don't know yet. We don't have that kind of experience with them.
Okay.
All right. Michael, are you there? Can you hear us? Nope.
Can. Good evening, members of council, city staff. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for being here. Have you heard a little bit of our discussion leading up to this?
Can we get him a little louder?
Did get an opportunity. I apologize if you hear any background noise or if I cut out. Due to some unfortunate scheduling, I am on the road at the moment, so I hope you'll forgive me.
That's all right.
But I did want to ensure that I was here to be able to speak to any of these specific questions that council may have.
You're on one of the scooters right now, right?
Exactly.
Oh, come on.
About a 3,000-mile journey on scooter.
Well, I don't know if you heard the questions from the council, but can you just give us a quick synopsis of your business operation and how you plan on operating within the city of West Bend?
Absolutely. I know that the word scooter has a bit of a frivolous connotation, but fundamentally the way that people use these systems, when you take a look at the data, is actually as a public transportation network. What that means is that the true benefit comes from allowing them to get directly from point A to point B. Certainly, we have no issues in terms of reducing some of the speed within the downtown business districts to ensure that everybody, including pedestrians, has a comfortable experience. I do think it is important to allow users to actually be able to get to where they want to go. Given the size of fleet that we're discussing for West Bend, certainly I think the city could support several hundred units. I don't think it's appropriate for us to start with that many. Maybe we start with a fraction of that and scale up to hopefully around 100 active units, but maybe we start with something closer around 40. You won't run into those issues of oversaturation and clutter that was referenced when San Diego was brought up. Instead, by doing a more methodical, gradual scale, I think you'll be able to see the benefit of these systems without the same kind of challenges. To that end, where we would advocate for parking is the boulevard strip or the furniture zone, depending on the terminology that you like to use. So that is what I believe was Mr. Shambo mentioned, described as that terrace area. So the concrete area where you might find a row of streetlights or a row of planters that is outside of the pedestrian right-of-way, but still accessible to enable people to get to where they need to go. If somebody is indeed taking this to their personal residence, then certainly there is some implicit authorization to park on their private property as they were using it as their transportation option. One of the most effective ways that we can help mitigate some of the risk is through having a locally based fleet manager, or in the case of West Bend, more likely two locally based fleet managers. These are individuals whose full-time responsibility through their small business is to go out there and check on every single active unit multiple times per day. What that means is that somebody is going out there, making sure everything is parked appropriately, keeping them recharged, doing the deployment, doing the rebalancing, which is just a fancy word for collecting the scooter from areas where people have ended their ride and bringing them back to where they're going to, one, look good, two, not be in the way, and three, be more likely to be used again, which in turn benefits the community. Certainly, we don't expect the city to take our word for that. For that reason, we provide real-time data dashboards that will actually show every single active unit, show the heat mapping, show the position of every active scooter, so that the city constantly has full visibility and full transparency in the performance of the fleet and can make any adjustments through the relationship that we would have with our account manager as might be necessary. Now, I know I've rambled on a lot, so I'll take a pause there to address any questions that might have come up based off of something I've mentioned.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much.
Michael, thank you for discussing this with us. You said something about through the relationship that we have, we'd be able to make adjustments. Does that mean that you've got software available that could put scooters into corrals or organized areas instead of the way you are mentioning starting with it now?
We do have the capacity to create preferred parking areas, incentivized parking areas, or even designated parking areas within specific zones in the city. What that means is certainly if it became an issue, we could absolutely adjust the delivery of our services. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to update our geofencing parameters or set those parking zones. The city will have a point of contact here at Bird that they can reach out to at any point to make any of those adjustments if we've identified any reason to do so together.
Okay.
What I would say is, before over-regulating, certainly it would be very important to make sure that you have an opportunity to see these systems to their true effect. Designated parking would present a significant challenge for us from a business standpoint and significantly reduce the benefit that these systems can deliver. Again, think of it as public transportation rather than anything else.
Yeah, I have no problem with starting out the way you're presenting. It's just I guess I'm coming from a skewed position. I was just over in Europe in a larger city, and perhaps it's because it was a larger city. This is Cologne, Germany, and I got onto a Lime scooter, and it was you picked it up in designated area, you dropped it off in designated area, and you couldn't stop the clock unless you were in a designated area, and it just seemed very, very organized and easy to understand to me. So I guess it could be because I was a tourist and perhaps that system was more suited to a city that deals with tourism. But again, like I said, I personally have no problem with starting out, doing it the way you're suggesting, as long as we do have the ability to adjust in case we see that there's problems.
Absolutely. Certainly we have the capacity to make those adjustments. When speaking about Cologne, they have several hundred, if not well over 1,000 designated parking spots, which I think would probably be a bit of a challenge to implement within West Bend.
Yeah, a quick question, Michael. What kind of speed do these scooters attain? In other words, are they, the 5 to 8 miles an hour that you, can push your scooter at? Back in the old, back when I was a kid and you had the roller skate on a 2x4, you pretty much couldn't go much faster than 5 or 8 or 10 miles an hour.
You had wheels?
These things go pretty fast, don't they?
Excellent question. So we actually speed cap the scooters at 15 miles per hour, which is about roughly what your average amateur bicyclist travels at. As Mr. Shambo described earlier, when speaking to the ordinance, we can also create zones that further reduce that maximum speed, such as within the central business district.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Michael? Yes, sir.
Would it be, Michael, predetermined that, I guess before the scooters would go live or go into, effect or business or whatever it was, would there be, you referenced, I don't know whether the contractor is the right term, that would be responsible for checking on them multiple times a day, getting them back to their predetermined spot? Does somebody take that responsibility on before the scooters go live, so there is that person before the scooters can start being used?
I can speak to that, Aaron.
Okay, sorry.
The ordinance requires that. It says any licensee shall identify contact information, including a phone number, for an operation managers based within 15 miles of the city.
Okay.
So not necessarily in West Bend, but
somebody
enough.
near, close enough that they're, if they are being left in undesignated spots, they're going to be taken care of.
Correct.
Okay.
There are also penalty provisions.
Yep, I saw the penalty provisions
if we
that were in
have
there.
to deal with it ourselves.
Okay, got it.
Anything else? All right, we do have a motion second on the floor to accept as presented with those minor corrections. Any other comments on that? Otherwise, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the ordinance, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that passes. All right, thanks, Michael. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Hope you have a great evening, members of council. Take care.
Have a great ride. All right. And we are on agenda item number 15, decision regarding non-reserve Class B combination license applications. Again, we have those two. The recommendation was for the Copper River Bar and Grill.
Do we need a motion before we can have discussion on this?
I'll make a motion that the reserve license would go to Copper,
The non-reserve?
yes, the non-reserve, yep.
Sounds good. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Butchlick and Dolnick. Now open up if there's comments. Yes, sir.
On what basis did you pick a winner or a loser here? I mean, obviously, this is a big difference, between the reserve and the non-reserve. So we've obviously put our thumb on the scale. We can't split the baby and give each one half a reserve license and half a non-reserved. So what was I guess what is the logic from the licensing board to award to Copper River over Barton? Was it Barton Inn?
House.
Barton House.
Yeah.
Copper River Bar. And each person had to fill out an application, and I reviewed the application as I was going through both applications. The application filled by Copper River Bar and Grill had a lot more ready and set to go to open up the bar. They've already got their bartenders, chefs, and everybody available, ready to open. Long Branch is still in the process of the paperwork, so they will be first opening, getting ready after June 30th. And the fact that we have the Riverwalk downtown, the west side, in process, they are also looking at later on down the road to have outside seating, which is what we've got. We're going to have a beautiful Riverwalk going through, and this is definitely the main reason that I felt we had an obligation to continue to move forward with the new Riverwalk and the business.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't disagree with some of your criteria, John. I just, I would hope that now and in the future, people consider what parts of the city need a leg up, need a little bit of help, and perhaps to get pushed forward a little bit. This is going to make it a little bit more difficult on the bar owner Eric to get opened, and that's in an area where we could really use another bar opened up there. How many bars are there downtown? And I understand, and I know they've spent a lot of money down there, and I don't think that you shouldn't do it the way you do, but it just. It's just unfortunate, and I just had to say something. So,
It wasn't just a simple decision, because I agreed. I agree. I did look at that 18th Avenue bar, because they've been having issues there. They've been sitting empty for quite a while. But the one concern I had is they didn't indicate that they were ready yet for opening, because they didn't have chefs and they didn't have employees available. So. That was the main reason I switched to the main reason I picked Copper Bar, because of the fact that they were actually ready and open up. And so it was a little bit of a difficult decision to make, but I felt that they had a better handle on it.
Sure.
I guarantee you, Barton will be my next selection.
Thank you, John. Is that 10? Just another quick, just kind of general question. Is that 10,000? Is that a state established number?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I
Yes.
thought, yeah.
The state has a quota on original licenses and has a set number of reserve licenses each municipality has based on the number of licenses they had on a specific date. I forget what the exact date is, but it was like 1999 or 2000 or something like that. And then
Okay.
the rest are based on population increase.
Yeah. And Eric Schur, I think is his last name. I'm sorry if I murdered that, but I met with him last week, and I just want to make sure he understands that he can still get a license. It's just not going to be the free one.
I'll note that we also,
Potentially.
well, we also did have the option to have an economic development grant back of the 10,000, but that the legislature removed that about 5 years ago.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
I guess in terms of the $10,000, is that 10,000 every year? Or is that 10,000?
One-time fee.
It's just
One
once,
time.
yeah.
Yep. There's a couple of other restrictions, like you can't move the license to a different premise, but the 10,000 is a one-time fee.
You can still, I'm sorry, just based on what we're talking about now, is it still possible to get like an extension of premise?
Yeah, you just
exceptions
can't.
and stuff like that,
If
right?
he switched his business from where the Long Branch was to he bought the Mauricio's building sometime in the
Sure.
future, he wouldn't be able to move his licensed premises from the one to the other.
Right.
Anything else? All right, we do have a motion on the floor. Did we get? Yeah, we got a second. We got a motion second. Then all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Duly noted. And we'll move to 16, relocate polling locations for August 9th, 2020. I'm sorry, what?
You gotta do the reserve license.
Oh, I do. You're right. Thank you. All right. So I'm sorry. We, with 15, we also need now a motion for the reserve license.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Then motion second. Any questions on that? Then hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. Now we're on to 16, which is relocate polling locations for August 9th, 2022 partisan primary and November 8th, 2022 general election. They were in your packet. The only change is with district number 5, moving from the VFW post to the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church and School.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Butchlick and Allen. Any questions on this? I'm sure Casey's just dying to answer them. Yes, sir.
I just have, being from an education background, I always have a little bit of concern with schools used as polling places. What is the plan, I guess, moving forward with, I guess, accessibility of the school building? Are kids going to be present at school that day? Are they going to be, is that going to be considered a no school day? You know, we've had a big push in the education world of really, really closely monitoring the ins and outs of a building, especially with all the things that have been going on in today's day and age. So that always gives me a little bit of a cause for concern when you have, you know, hundreds of people possibly moving through a school building throughout the day.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Just any educational facility, just in general, just with you know, non-students, non-parents moving throughout a building.
The Good Shepherd Church and School it's also a school. So there's
Okay.
there's a day school there.
Yeah.
And
my
I see.
kid's
I'm sorry.
school as well, so
I'm
that's
sorry.
why.
I'm sorry. I see that now.
Yeah.
Yep. Got it.
we did tour the facility, and it's a great facility. It's going to work well for a polling place. We're very thankful that Good Shepherd is allowing us to utilize it. There's a separate entrance, so the school kids will be moving around throughout the building, if they choose to have school.
Okay.
And it sounds like their school principal is still debating whether to have special days off when there's an election or not.
So they may modify their school calendar to on a Tuesday of election, just make that a non-school day.
That would be totally their call,
Okay.
but they
Right.
have indicated that they might do that. Without doing that, we would have extra poll workers that are greeters and separating the poll workers from any kind of movement. So there wouldn't be, I'm sorry, so the voters from any kind of movement throughout the school. So the voter, once they enter the Good Shepherd facility, they would only be allowed to go into the polling area and then depart. They would not be moving through the school at all and interacting with kids.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Alderman Dolick?
For the city attorney, I looked at the statute on location of polling places, and there was something in there about that wards can be combined, but it doesn't indicate wards from different districts. So I take it there's no exception that there has to be the polling place has to be in the aldermanic district. And the reason I'm asking is it's going to be, I don't know if the other districts have this problem. It's going to be tough in my district. So, I mean, there's no exceptions in the statute for this?
I believe, well, we did have 1 year where we moved to, was it the?
District 4 voted here and it wasn't.
But I
in
also
the-
think we used to have one at the, combined one at the community center when it used to be at the county. Yeah, I think we used to have a combined one there. So there's some ability to do that. The goal is always to have it within the district, obviously.
What kind of trouble is your district having, Jed?
Well, there's
Just finding a
Sorry,
location.
Finding a location.
Finding one, okay, gotcha, sorry.
Because the PAC building is no longer in the district, which is where we had been voting.
Oh, I see, redistricting.
And
Yeah,
now
yeah, yeah.
with VFW didn't work out, and now we're doing this, and pretty soon we're gonna have to pitch a tent unless we can figure something else out.
Right.
So, okay.
It could be a nice tent.
Yeah, really big, pretty tent.
All right. Any other questions? And all those in favor of that, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And last but certainly not least is a report by, I believe, Alderman Mono regarding the Plan Commission meeting.
Yeah, let me just get the right notes here. Okay, yeah. So I can't remember what the date was for it, but we did have a meeting, and we did discuss the annexation of 105 acres from Trenton. Recommendation. It was for a single-family subdivision, and hopefully we'll be seeing that at the next council meeting. Shepherd of the Hills, CSM. What was that about again? Yeah, that's it for the 4 residential plots. Yeah, and they are a little unusual looking, but we'll be seeing that soon too. Conditional use for food truck vendors at the hub, and that was approved. That's it.
Sounds great. Then I'll open up to the council. If anybody has any announcements for the good of the order. Then having no further business for the county council, I adjourn by the call of the chair. Have a great night.